Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Yes, it's Indicator time, and it's Things Change, directed by David Mamet, written by Mamet and Shel Silverstein, from 1988, starring Don Ameche and Joe Mantegna. This is one of my favourite films of all time. It's one of those films. When I started this channel 2.5 years ago, I did a series of videos about films that should get Blu-ray releases. Lots of people have done those kind of videos, and it is amazing how many of those films have now got Blu-ray releases. And Things Change is one of those films that featured on one of those videos, because I have Things Change on DVD, but it's one of those DVDs that has no artwork on it or whatever, and it's a two-sided flipper. One was a widescreen version of the film, the other one was a pan and scan 4:3 version of the film. So it's pretty amazing when Indicator kind of released a teaser picture and figured out it was going to be Things Change they were going to release. It's one of those quite moving moments. As usual, you get the booklet. This is out on March 22nd, but if you pre-ordered from Indicator, you get a bit earlier, so I got it on March the 10th. Again, it's a wonderful booklet. The extras are really good. You get a 21-minute interview from this year, 2021, from Mamet, reminiscing about his career in making Things Change. In typical Mamet fashion, he's got his feet up on a desk, talking in a very Mamet way. And then we have a half-hour interview with Joe Mantegna from 2021, which is absolutely fantastic. Some of the anecdotes and stories he has about Don Ameche and working with Don Ameche could bring a tear to a glass eye. Then we have a 17-minute video essay with composer Aleric Jans, who has scored, I think he says, 4 David Mamet films. And then you have a 10-minute appreciation by Rob Deering. And again, 32-page booklet. So it's a wonderful release. If you've never seen the film, I urge you to go and buy this film immediately, or when it comes out. It is one of the most underrated films of the 80s. And it is just wonderful. I mean, this is a random review, but it's also a neglected gem video. So I'm going to have it in. I'm not going to do it twice and do a random review and neglected gem, but it really is a neglected gem. It's a film that, if you look at David Mamet's, certainly his early work, it was his second film after the silky smooth and sharp as a knife House of Games, and then he would do Homicide, which for me is his true masterpiece and one of the great American films in the 90s that nobody talks about. But Things Change, it's a PG as far as nasty language. There's only a shit and a heck, which obviously, if you're familiar with David Mamet's language, that's pretty tame. But it's a film that isn't really made anymore. In some ways it's old fashioned. It is a version of The King and the Beggar, I guess. It's about a guy who runs a shoe shop or shoe repair, Don Ameche, who was 80 when he made this film. This was after Trading Places, and he'd kind of garnered a little bit of late career success. He was kind of back in the public eye as far as getting roles again. And these mafia guys, including Ricky Jay, the wonderful Ricky Jay, who appeared in quite a lot of Mamet films and Paul Thomas Anderson films, and Jack Johnson, who Mamet actually dedicated the play American Buffalo to. They come to his shop. They say they have a proposition for him. They go to this house where Mike Newsbaum, again another Mamet regular, offers him to take the place of somebody who has been accused of a crime, and they will pay him money for every year he's in prison. They say he'll only spend 3 to 5 years in prison for shooting somebody, which does seem a bit light, and then he can get his dream boat. So he agrees to this, and we also meet Joe Mantegna's character Jerry, who Joe Mantegna describes as, he thinks that he's Joe Mantegna's character in House of Games, but he's not. So he's a kind of wannabe. Excuse me. We join him, we see him washing dishes because he's on probation because he screwed up a job with the mafia. So he's a kind of low level guy trying to get back in their good graces. So he gets the job of babysitting Don Ameche for this weekend before Don Ameche goes to court and gets sent to prison. So again, you could say this setup is predictable. We've seen it before. Again, it is old fashioned. You could see this being shot in the 40s or 50s. But it's just so beautifully done with these great Mamet regulars. Mamet's a pretty incestuous filmmaker. He uses guys actors he knows, he's worked with before. If you go back to his Chicago theatre days, he obviously knew Joe Mantegna. Joe Mantegna became a star with Glengarry Glen Ross in the Ricky Roma role. The film also stars Robert Prosky, who was Shelley Levine in the original run of Glengarry Glen Ross, so he goes back with him. You know, that whole Chicago theatre at the time, you had like Stuart Gordon, who would go on to do Reanimator. John Malkovich came on a bit later. William H. Macy, who's obviously a huge star now. He was one of Mamet's students, so he's in Things Change with a bleached blonde hairdo, and then he's in Homicide, a film after this as well. Felicity Huffman, who is now William H. Macy's wife, her first screen role is in Things Change. It's just a wonderful crew, and if you've watched those first 3 Mamet films, you'll recognise all these faces. But the film is about, again, as a lot of Mamet films are about, it's about identity, who we really are, what makes us who we really are. So Jerry, Joe Mantegna's character, decides to, instead of just sitting in a room playing gin all weekend, they decide to go to Lake Tahoe, you know, give Gino some time in the casino or whatever, and he bumps into William H. Macy's character, and William H. Macy hears, you know, he's been put on probation and is ragging him a little bit, and Joe Mantegna pretty much acts up and goes, would I be on probation you know, if I was here with him, then because William H. Macy's not that bright, he kind of reads into it that Don Ameche must be a boss from Chicago. So everything gets kind of blown out of proportion. Even J.T. Walsh, who was in House of Games, turns up as gives a wonderful turn as a concierge, who William H. Macy, when he goes for the keys, keeps kind of shaking his head and needs to go higher. So they end up in the penthouse suite. They end up, everything's paid for. There's a wonderful scene where Don Ameche keeps winning money at the casino, and Joe Mantegna has said that he'll cover him. And of course, he keeps winning more money, so Joe Mantegna gets more nervous. You know, at the time, Joe Mantegna perhaps wasn't known to be able to do comedy much, but he's absolutely wonderful in this. It's such deft stuff. Again, it's lots of looks and expressions, and everything kind of gets out of control, and then it ends up heavier guys come to invite Don Ameche to come to a local mob boss's house for lunch, played by Robert Prosky, and it ends up he has a meeting at night with the guys who set Don Ameche up, and obviously hilarity ensues. Robert Prosky, so originally Mamet wanted Marcello Mastroianni to play the Don Ameche role and Don Ameche to play the Robert Prosky role, but Mastroianni and another Italian actor weren't available. To be honest, I feel Mastroianni would be too tall for this role. I think Don Ameche is absolutely perfect, because he starts the film as this beaten down old guy who, his dreams have never come to fruition. It's somebody we can identify with, unless your dreams have come to fruition. So I just think it is perfect casting the way it worked out, and Joe Mantegna has a beautiful little story about the whole casting of Don Ameche, which is just quite sweet. So he comes to Robert Prosky's house. Of course, Robert Prosky, I have this bizarre notion that this film exists in a universe with Michael Mann's Thief, and Robert Prosky is the same mob boss that he is in Thief, but that's just me. Yeah, Thief was earlier than this, but that's still my theory. And again, Robert Prosky wants to know why Don Ameche's here, and of course Don Ameche just, kind of, I don't want to talk about business, and Joe Mantegna is just sweating and sweating because he wonders when his cover's going to get blown. But they talk about shoes, they talk about, it's about two old men just talking about family and life, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it's a slow-paced film, but you just drink in the atmosphere. Again, if you're cynical, you could say, we've seen it before. It's predictable, but it doesn't matter. I mean, Joe Mantegna has a wonderful thing that he says in the interview and the extras. People sometimes get caught up with, is this film important, or is this film, does it tell you truths about things? And Joe Mantegna pretty much just says, when you watched the film, was it time well spent? Did you enjoy yourself? And that's what this film is about. Mamet's Glengarry Glen Ross is about working for a living. Oleana is about sexual politics. House of Games is about deception and artifice. Homicide is one of the great American films about race relations in America. Things Change is just a beautiful little comedy. That's all it is. But again, you have the depth of honour and betrayal, and giving your word and what that means. So I'm not going to talk about what happens at the end of the film, what happens when they go back to Chicago. You're going to have to go buy the brand new indicator Blu-ray. The film looks beautiful. The extras are wonderful. It is a treasure, in my opinion. It's one of the kind of forgotten films of the 80s that is just wonderful. I mean, 1988 was a great year for cinema, Midnight Run. But Things Change is just beautiful. The acting is beautiful. Everything about it is wonderful. Again, it kind of is an odd film for Mamet in the sense that it's not a swear fest. But it's just so wonderful. It's funny, it's moving, and again, it is time very well spent, in my opinion. So thanks very much for watching this random review / neglected gem. If you've seen Things Change, let me know what you think of it. Watching it again, it just stands up. It's an absolute pleasure. It's 101 minutes. Doesn't seem like that. It just flies by. It has a beautiful melancholy score. It's just it's a beautiful, exquisite little film that films like that aren't really made anymore. Certainly not in America. Yeah, it is a little gem. So thanks very much for watching. Again, leave your comments below if you've seen it. And hopefully you'll join me for more neglected gem / random reviews. This is Solitude Ronin from Solitude Ronin Films, saying things do indeed change.